We save the life, but do we lose the limb? That's really the question here, isn't it?
It is. It's the central tension in modern trauma care.
We've become so efficient at stopping the bleed. I mean, hemorrhage control is something we are excellent at.
Absolutely.
But now we're seeing this secondary crisis. We save patients from bleeding out only to, what, condemn them to preventable amputations.
It's a huge issue. The tourniquet is a tool for life preservation. There's no debate about that.
Right.
But if it's mismanaged, it becomes a device that actually dooms the limb. We have to change the mindset.
Away from what?
Away from just stopping the bleed and moving toward actively buying back the limb.
Buying back the limb. I like that. And that's our mission today. We're looking at how to reimagine pre-hospital tourniquet protocol.
Exactly. Shifting away from that old set it and forget it mentality.
Towards what? Aggressive reassessment. So who is this for?
This is for healthcare providers. Medics, coursemen, paramedics, emergency room staff. This is not basic first aid. This is about clinical precision. In high-stress environments, we're talking about why limbs are being lost that, really should be saved.
Okay, so here's the plan. We'll examine the high and tight oversight.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to break down the specific ischemic time windows. Then clarify the difference between tourniquet conversion and tourniquet replacement.
Two very different things.
And finally, we'll look at the new rules for who can actually remove one.
All right, let's get to it.
Let's start with the standard. Everyone knows high and tight. It's the rule for care under fire. Why is this becoming a problem?
Well, first, let's be clear. High and tight is absolutely necessary sometimes.
When you're under fire.
When you're under fire, you use it. When the injury site is obscured, you use it. If the situation is just too volatile, you go high and tight. You have to stop the bleeding immediately.
Right. You don't have time to be precise.
No, you don't. It's a blunt instrument for a blunt situation. The problem isn't the application.
It's what comes after.
It's the failure to reassess. We apply it, and then we just leave it. We treat a temporary triage measure as if it's a permanent solution.
Do we have any data on how often that happens?
We do, and it's concerning. Retrospective data shows a staggering oversight. We're talking up to 49% of military tourniquets were applied to minor injuries.
49%.
Almost half. Injuries where they were clinically unnecessary.
And in the civilian world?
It's even higher. It hits 53%. So more than half of civilian tourniquets are put on wounds that just didn't require one.
So you have a device that's designed to cut off all blood flow.
Right.
You apply it to a limb that just has a minor wound. Physiologically, what's happening?
You're subjecting healthy proximal tissue to profound ischemia unnecessarily. You're starving muscle. You're starving nerves of oxygen.
To a part of the limb that isn't even hurt.
Exactly. A large section of it.
It feels like we are just repeating history here.
We are. I mean, look at World War II. We have documentation of catastrophic errors.
Yeah.
Medics applied tourniquets when they weren't needed, and they left them on for way too long.
And the result was?
Lost limbs. It got so bad, the 7th Army surgeon had to direct that the sole indication for a tourniquet was an active, spurting hemorrhage from a major artery.
Wow.
They almost abandoned the tool entirely because the misuse was causing so much damage.
We don't want to abandon the tourniquet.
No, of course not. We just want to stop repeating the mistakes of 1945. The goal is clinical precision. We need to identify when the device is needed and, just as important, when it needs to come off.
Which brings us to the clock. When does that clock start?
The physiological clock starts the moment the windlass is locked. That is time 0.
Okay.
And every single minute of ischemia from that point on increases the risk of muscle necrosis.
So what's the safe zone?
The safe zone is less than 2 hours. If that tourniquet is on for under 2 hours, ischemic complications are minimal.
That's your window.
That is your window. You must convert or replace the device within that time frame. That's how you buy back the limb.
Is that 2-hour rule absolute? Are there exceptions?
Yes, there is a huge exception. It's what we call the shock caveat.
Okay, explain the shock caveat.
This is a nuance that's often missed by junior providers.
Yeah.
If the casualty is in shock before you even apply the tourniquet, that window shrinks.
So if they're unconscious, confused, pale?
All of that. The limb is already compromised. Systemic perfusion is low. The body's shunting blood to the core. So that limb was already starving before you put the tourniquet on.
So the allowable ischemic time is a lot less than 2 hours.
Significantly less. You do not have the full window.
You don't?
No.
Okay, what happens if we miss that window? What's going on between 2 and 6 hours?
Now you're in the danger zone. Once you cross that 2-hour mark, risk just escalates.
You're looking at what?
You're looking at muscle necrosis. You're looking at compartment syndrome, which is going to require a fasciotomy to relieve that pressure. You're looking at potential renal failure from muscle tissue breakdown.
Can we still take it off in that zone?
Yes, but it requires aggressive intervention. Tourniquet conversion or replacement must be attempted, assuming the patient is stable. You're fighting to prevent permanent morbidity.
And what's the hard stop, the point of no return?
The point of no return, that is greater than 6 hours.
6 hours.
If a tourniquet has been in place for more than 6 hours, do not remove it in the field.
Why not? I mean, if it's killing the limb, why not just take it off?
Because that limb is now toxic. Releasing that pressure triggers a whole cascade of problems.
Like what?
You release systemic acidosis. You release coagulopathy factors. You trigger a fatal reperfusion injury.
So saving the limb kills the patient.
Correct. The potassium load alone can be enough to stop the heart. These limbs are, frankly, often unsalvageable. They require a controlled surgical amputation. If you release that tourniquet in the field after 6 hours, you are releasing death into the body.
That's the stark reality. Okay, so less than 2 hours is the goal. 2 to 6 is dangerous. Over 6 is hands-off.
That's the summary.
Now, we've used 2 terms here, tourniquet conversion and tourniquet replacement. Providers sometimes conflate these. What is the precise difference?
They're completely different procedures with different goals.
Okay, define tourniquet conversion for us.
Tourniquet conversion is when you transition from a tourniquet to a hemostatic pressure dressing.
So we're taking the tourniquet off entirely?
Yes. The goal is the total elimination of limb ischemia. We want to restore full blood flow.
And when do we do this?
For those minor injuries, the 49% we talk about, or for major vascular injuries where the bleeding is actually controlled by wound packing.
Okay, now define tourniquet replacement.
Tourniquet replacement is when you move a high and tight tourniquet to a more distal position, usually about 2 to 3 inches above the actual wound.
So we keep a tourniquet on, we just move it lower.
Correct. The goal is not to restore flow to the wound itself. The goal is preservation of the proximal tissue. We want to save as much limb length as possible.
And the indication for that is?
Amputations, or vascular injuries that rebleed the moment you loosen the tourniquet.
So you can't stop it with a dressing.
Right. You have to keep a tourniquet on, but you place it as low as you possibly can.
For tourniquet replacement, we need specific pressure targets. We're not just cranking blindly. What are the numbers?
For the arm, you're aiming for 50 to 100 millimeters of mercury above the systolic pressure.
And for the leg, the thigh?
For the thigh, the target is higher. It's 250 to 350 millimeters of mercury.
Why those specific numbers?
It ensures occlusion, but it also helps prevent unnecessary crush injury to the underlying nerves.
So how does a provider on the ground decide? How do you triage between conversion and replacement?
We can break it down into 4 clinical categories.
Okay, category 1.
A minor injury. The bleeding is not life-threatening.
The action is.
Tourniquet conversion is mandatory. If you leave it on, you're just causing unnecessary damage. Convert to a dressing.
Got it. Category 2.
A major vascular injury, but it's controlled. You've packed the wound, the bleeding has stopped.
Action.
Tourniquet conversion is indicated. Get it off, convert to the dressing, restore the blood flow.
Okay, category 3.
A vascular injury that requires a tourniquet. You loosen the high tourniquet for a moment, and the wound just starts spraying. Packing fails.
So the action is?
Tourniquet conversion is contraindicated. You can't use a dressing. So tourniquet replacement is recommended. Move the tourniquet distal and save that proximal tissue.
And the last one, category 4.
Total or near total amputation.
The action seems obvious, but let's state it.
Right. Tourniquet conversion is contraindicated. You can't fix an amputation with a dressing.
Of course not.
Tourniquet replacement is recommended to save all possible limb length.
Okay, so who is allowed to do this? This seems to be where the controversy is.
It is. This is a big one.
It used to be medics only.
The old school doctrine was absolutely medics only. You wait for the medic.
But the reality on the ground is changing.
We have a new reality. And it's what some are calling the democratization of management.
What's driving that?
Context. Look at the conflict in Ukraine. We're seeing high attrition of medics, and we're seeing prolonged field care. Evacuation windows are often 6+ hours.
6 hours? That hits the hard stop we just talked about.
Exactly. If you wait for a medic who is 6 hours away, you have guaranteed an amputation. Or worse, death.
So what's the policy trigger now?
It comes down to time and distance. If a medic is more than 2 hours away, anyone who is trained in the task must attempt conversion or replacement.
Anyone?
Anyone. Combat lifesavers, other non-medical personnel.
That is a huge shift in responsibility.
It is. but waiting is a death sentence for that limb. So limb preservation has to be a pre-hospital mandate.
The soldier, the first responder, they have to make the call.
Yes.
Yes.
We have to train for the worst-case scenario, and we have to empower the person at the point of injury.
Let's recap then. 4 main points to take away from this.
Okay. 1. High and tight is for the start of the problem, not the duration of care.
2.
You have to watch that 2-hour window. And remember, if shock is present, you have less time.
3. The hard stop.
Never, ever release a tourniquet after 6 hours in the field.
And 4. Know the procedure.
You must know the difference between tourniquet conversion, which means switching to a dressing, and tourniquet replacement, which means lowering the tourniquet.
The entire mindset has to shift.
It does. I'd challenge everyone listening, look at your training, look at your institutional protocols.
And what are they looking for?
Ask yourself, are your protocols designed for a 30-minute urban transport? Or are they robust enough to handle a 6-hour delay?
And if they're only designed for that 30-minute window?
Then your protocol is obsolete. You're preparing for the easy day, not the hard one.
Go review those protocols. Be ready to buy back the limb.
Precision saves limbs.